See in just a second. Hey, what's up, people? Just checking in on a super busy week and trying to figure out if I can actually paint during one of the least focused times of my life. We have, of course, a new puppy inside the house. If you are an ardent watcher of my live streams, follower of my Patreon or Instagram, then you will know that we have a fantastic, amazing, beautiful new puppy in our lives, and she is taking 115% of our attention. So this painting that I started last week on YouTube, this is going to be like the first time actually that I've done a painting like sequentially like that. It was supposed to be an alla prima, but I didn't get to finish my alla prima. So now I'm kind of going back and thinking, well, maybe it's interesting if I just try and like finish this one. I like, full disclosure, I've never actually painted 2 layers on this oil paper. I've only ever painted like 1 pass. So this is the first time I'll have done that. Which is a great thing to do when you're like live streaming because the results are totally unpredictable. Great idea, right? So, by the way, also, if you end up hearing some barking or, God forbid, whining in the background, that'll be Iggy making her presence known and letting us know that she doesn't like to play alone for too long. She wants company. But yeah, so I'm just going to go through, I'm not going to do a real elaborate kind of repainting process here. I'm actually going to be about as cut and dried as I can be and just kind of toss in color values where I see them. Let's see. Yeah, so a couple questions coming in on the live stream on YouTube. By the way, if you are watching this on Instagram, back here on that camera, there's a full 4K stream going on YouTube if you want to switch over. But for those of you on YouTube, I got a question from Wesley Wood asking, did you oil out before today's sitting? No, actually, because I painted the first layer just totally directly, and it is like a first, just like a first pass, there wasn't really much of any sinking in whatsoever. And so the need to oil out was, yeah, not at all present. So after this sitting, you know, if I worked on it again, then I would definitely need to oil out because by that point, you know, you're going to have enough layers that the paint can start kind of sinking in, which naturally occurs and sucks. But that's life, right? So let's see. MJ Artwork is saying congrats on the studio sale. Yeah, the studio sale actually is still going. There's still a few pieces hanging around. If anybody is been thinking, gosh, I really need one of Steven's colored pencil drawings in my life, then that's still happening. There's a post on my Patreon page, which is open to the public that everybody can kind of check out. So far, it's been so good, you know, a lot of pieces finding homes. That's always nice to do, but there's still a few hanging around. In fact, if you have been watching these live streams, you actually probably know a lot of the work that's there because, you know, some of the live streams I go off and I finish later, and yeah, so those are kind of included in the sale. Anyway. Let's get some good questions, folks. So what's going on? I've got Rumen Plamanov saying hello from Bulgaria. What's up? Joshua Smith is asking if I'll paint Iggy. Like, come on. Are you serious? Like, of course. Cornelia and I are already making plans to paint Iggy, to have competitions about who will paint the best Iggy. So stay tuned on Patreon and all channels for some serious Iggy-based content coming up in the very near future. Right now, you know, we're just trying to like acclimate her. By the way, it's going to be puppy talk for half of this, so if you're not a dog person, I understand if you tune out. I wish you'd stay, but I get it. We are just trying to get her kind of like acclimated to life in the world with us. And so we haven't yet started to paint her. I mean, truth be told, this will be like the first time I've picked up a paintbrush since the last live stream, frankly. Just because it's not so conducive with a pup in the house to be trying to make oil paintings. But yeah, she'll arrive. She'll get a little bit more used to just hanging out on her own, you know, playing a little bit on her own, and then, you know, we'll be able to paint a little bit here and there. Yeah, well, yeah, we got to work on like just getting her to nap on her own. Like she's like right now we have to like put her down for naps. She's, you know, she really wants to sleep on our laps, and that's how it is. Yeah, so about this painting, by the way, the part that might be interesting for anybody except for me. Yeah, so I'm just trying to, like I said, just fill in the color values where I see them kind of lacking. There's a couple of design issues. I think she had a little bit too much along this contour. So I needed to dial that back a little bit. There's a little bit too much space out there. Then I just got a lot of just bits and pieces to kind of work on, you know, make subtle transitions, try to create better color harmony. I'm trying to decide also like what I'm going to do. Am I going to fill this whole thing out? Like, is that part of the plan, or is it more that I'm just going to be doing a head inside of a white area? So I don't know. I just don't know the answers to those questions. This is like this is like jazz improv right here. And what you see is like me just trying to figure it out on the fly, which can be fun. I mean, that's like when you get those studio days. I don't know if any of you are like around studios where they have like model painting sessions, and you just kind of come in with a canvas and you just kind of do your best for a few hours, and then whatever comes kind of comes, and you just deal with it, you know. Like sometimes it's great, sometimes it's, more often than not, it's not. And then you just kind of move on. So that's me right now, like just kind of looking at solutions and seeing what comes out. Let's see. Tom Haskins asks, afternoon, Stephen, it looks like you don't stretch the oil paper. Do you not get issues with warping of the paper, similar to what you would on the back of a canvas? Also, congrats on the dog. So with this paper, it does actually stretch. So there are I finally got some larger pieces in the mail from Legion, and I actually tried kind of stretching a couple of them, and it does respond to water well, and it's able to stretch. And so like all things about it are positive and normal. So eventually I will work on kind of stretched paper. This is just taped up, of course. So no, I mean, but I also don't think I experienced really any warping with it any more than you would with a normal piece of paper that's just kind of taped into place. So yeah, like I said, I haven't had any problems with it as of yet. But that's always like one of those, hasn't happened yet. You know, we'll see what comes. You think everything's going fine, and then all of a sudden you get some weird warping happening, and you get really bummed out. But hopefully that's not the place we end up. Let's see. By the way, I just gotta like keep my head on straight here. You know, it's a lot going on in this painting, and you know, I just want to make sure that I try and do a bit of justice to the image, which I think is a good one. I think it's a cool pose. That's kind of what it boils down to. You know, you're looking at a painting, or sorry, you're looking at a source image. I used to have this thing, you know, where I'd have a bunch of source images of a model, and I'd be looking at them, and I'd think, oh, this one's really cool, or that one's really cool, or whatever. And I would do this thing, and I, to this day, I still don't totally like understand what I thought I was thinking. But I would go like, oh no, this one's too cool. I'll do another one first before I use this image. You know, like I'd try and like save up my really good source images. And then I just realized, like, you know, out of like 100 source images, there might only be one that's like a really good painting. So you just got to do it when you're ready to do it. I don't know if anybody out there has even remotely a similar experience to that, but I can kind of remember for years I would have this weird mentality about like saving my source. I don't understand it. I can't profess to understanding anything about the psychology there, but that was the idea. Nowadays I just kind of go for it. If I feel like I have a good one, then great, that's the one. I go with it, and if I make a great job of it, that's good. If I make an awful job of it, then I don't know. Maybe if the image is good enough, I'll do it again. But usually you just roll on. Yeah. Anyway, what other questions are happening here? Ruben Blanco says, "Hi from Chile. Do you have any advice for achieving unity? I don't know if my paper is too rough or if my pencil is lacking sharpness." Chances are your pencil is lacking sharpness. If you can't get unified values, one of two things is happening. Either your pencil is not sharp enough. I mean, I've never really seen the paper where completely the paper itself was not capable of unity. Like, I'm not sure that's so much a thing. So definitely we're gonna lean on the side of it's just needing those kind of sharp pencils. And also, like, the other thing that it can be, and this is, I think, thing with a lot of people, is that, and it's no like credit or demerit on their their personal psychology, but they'll overestimate how quickly they can go adding value. Especially with graphite, it does not respond well to you thinking you can like move really quickly with getting nice, even, rich tones and gradations. That's just not how that stuff is built. So I would say sharpen those pencils up, slow down the process a little bit, and you're more than likely going to have better results. If you don't have better results after that, then a deeper analysis will be required to kind of get to the bottom of it. Let's see. Joshua Smith says, "Do you have any advice on how to work with models?" Well, being polite, being courteous goes a long way. It's just, it's like any other, professional relationship that you have in your life. Like, they are there because they want to have a job. You're there because you want to have a good model. Mutual respect is going to be the foundation of getting that job done. In terms of, like, generic, like working with a model, I don't know. You just work with them, don't you? Like, I guess it depends on like what you're trying to achieve. If you're just trying to do portrait studies and things, I think you get yourself a nice timer. Make sure the studio is warm enough. If not, get some, little like sort of plug-in heaters that the model can have on themselves. Make sure there's like plenty of coffee and tea available, because I think the primary thing that can make like a really rough modeling session is a model that's like nodding off. Like, that's probably the worst thing. No, all right, that's not the worst thing, but it's among the worst things. You have like a super sleepy model, and then you kind of can't get anything done with them because the... Yeah, by the way, so you're working with a model. Cornelia, by the way. Cornelia has her workstation downstairs now, which is great. So she's kind of partially participating in the live stream. And so she says, ask questions. So like, talk to your model. Like, it's okay to like have a little bit of a convo with them, just to keep them kind of awake and stimulated. Because otherwise, what happens when you sit there for so long is you start to get like this look on your model, which is like that, but you want your model like this, but they're like that. Like, that's what happens when you just sit there for way too long. Please don't screen grab those faces I just made, by the way. But yeah, so you want to keep your model active, awake, alive, happy, healthy, caffeinated, all those things. Other than that, yeah, I don't know. One thing that I always try to do is that when you're working with a portrait model, I point them to my hand. I'll say, like, look at my hand like this, right? Look at my like middle finger and my thumb. That is the center of your forehead and your chin, right? So when you need them to like tilt, you can say it like this, like you look at them and you say like that or like this. It's one way you can kind of help to control them. Another, this is actually full on tip. This is probably like be its own YouTube video, but let me take off my shades for a second, right? So when you're trying to get a model, a portrait model, into the right position with their head, one of the things you can do is this, right? And everybody that's watching this, I know like you're probably doing something else, but listen, do this with me, right? So close your left eye and with your right eye, look at the bridge of your nose, right? So I'm looking with this eye on the right, I'm looking at the bridge of my nose, which is blurry, but I can see it. And I'm looking past it, out into the room. Now, far back on the wall, behind my computer screen, I can see an area where the bridge of my nose lines up. Now then you tell your model, right, when you're trying to position your head on a left-right kind of axis, tell them to close that eye, memorize the spot where the bridge of their nose lines up on the wall. That way they can always kind of get back to the correct position. That was one that saved me a lot of times working in sight size. Oh my God. You know, because it's really hard to like remember your kind of position in space, so to speak, right? Yeah, not easy at all. Anyway, those are my tips for working with models. I hope that they bring you, yeah.
Be strategic.
Cornelia says be strategic, but I don't know what she's talking about. What do you mean?
Paint the eyes right after the break.
Paint the eyes right after the model break. So usually, you know, when you're having a model, you'll have 25-minute sessions and 5-minute breaks, right? So when you're trying to like get that awesome, cool look in the model's eyes, like when they're really alert, paint them when they've just gotten back from a model break. So that's one way that you can make sure that you're getting the best version of the model, is to paint kind of, as Cornelia says, strategically. Yeah, I like that. Let's see, what else is coming on here? Questions. Roman Plamanov says, the far eye in a 3/4 view always looks off in my drawing. Any ideas? The far... Well, I mean, it could be a little bit of a perspective issue. But I mean, I don't know if there's like any verbal tips. I think, you know, the tip that I would want to make would be, you know, to kind of look at the drawing and make an assessment and just see, yeah, what the actual issues are. I mean, there's kind of multiple levels of perspective also with the eye, in the sense that, yeah, you have the perspective of the head, but then you have that upper eyelid, for instance, that is like kind of curling over. You're going to see the top of it on one side and the bottom of it on another side. So there can be some really cool, complicated stuff to do when you're working on a head in a 3/4 view. Yeah, so let's see. Live streaming is hard, and I am not having the most focused painting time, but I'm gonna get there, folks. It's like do or die today. Like either I figure this one out today, or I don't know what I'm gonna do with this painting. So you're witnessing a high pressure situation in which success and failure are really close together on the cone of probability. As I say that, then I just start dabbing paint on the bridge of the nose like it's an action movie or something. Painting, you know, it is what it is. It takes time, focus, attention. It's slow generally. Ooh, you can hear Iggy playing over there right now. She's having a good time. Let's see. Joshua Smith says, oh, that's the advice about working with models. Sopan R says, how do you practice? Quick sketches in life drawing sessions. Sight size are constructive. What's the right approach to improve figure drawing for fine art students? A lot of questions in there. How do I practice? I just work all the time. Whenever I have the opportunity to work, then I'm working, you know. I guess in a sense, like that's a kind of practice, if you will. I mean, in a way, at a certain point, you know, it's like you get that feeling like you're, you know, like the local dentist. Like you go into your office, you know, you take your patients, you do your work. You know, it's a scheduling issue. Like it's like a job in a way, like it should be. It should be like a job if you're really gonna do this in a sustained way. You're gonna do this, you know, uh, as a profession. You need to like treat it so much like a profession. If you don't, I think it'll come around and bite you. You know, if you're just waiting for inspiration all the time, rather than getting that like lunch pail mentality where you're just doing your job, you know, and your job is to be awesome and expressive and exciting and interested, you know, and to progress and to do all those things. That like that's your job. So treating it as much as you can like just like what it is to be professional, I think is the best thing. Otherwise, you know, there's a lot of hang-ups you can get about. It's really easy to, you know, let life convince you not to get into the studio that day or to not do work that day. I'm like living that right now. Let me tell you, Iggy is a great reason not to get over to the easel and get down to business, because she's always there for some attention. She always wants to hang out, wants to take a nap, she wants to go for a walk. You know, Iggy always wants to do something. And in your life, I'm sure there are many different Iggy's that all want your attention and your time and all the stuff that you don't have, if you're going to really commit yourself to painting. If that makes sense. I'm sure I'm really far out on the metaphor spectrum today. Iggy's actually going for a walk right now. Cornelia is preparing her. So there's lots of little. You got to talk to a dog, of course, and with positive sounds. Like dogs, it's all about intonation. So you want to just sound like you're like really happy with them all the time. So you're like, yeah, Iggy, everything's great, everything's fun, Iggy. Otherwise, they can hear they can hear you be annoyed. Like for sure, a dog can sense and hear that you're annoyed. Let's see. Oh yeah, what's the right approach for figure drawing? Listen, it's about destinations, right? So if you wanted to get here, I'd tell you a certain, amount of things that you would do to get here. If you wanted to paint like a totally different painter, I would tell you a totally different series of things. So unfortunately, it's an incomplete question. If you fill out that question with a little bit more detail, right? If I want my work to look like Bouguereau, what's the right way to do that? If I want my work to look like this, what's the right way to do that? I mean, you have to have a qualifier in there, I think, to get any kind of, kind of useful, viable answer to that question. Let's see. Wesley Wood is asking, have you tried varnishing a painting done on this paper, or are there other ways to protect the finished painting? Now, because most of the other efforts that I've done on this, all the other efforts I've done on this paper are like one pass, I have not actually varnished anything that has been done on this paper, as it is not sunken in. It's a very resilient surface, and it's more than likely, in every case, it will be framed under glass. So in that situation, yeah, there's not like a lot of purpose to varnishing it, because it will be protected by the glass from whatever environmental, dust and dander, etc., that could get onto it. So I don't have any experience doing that, so I don't know. Great question. Don't know the answer. Haven't tried it. So I'm just gonna get some nice light values in here. I want to get some cool light values on the forehead here. I mean, this is really like me this is how I usually kind of paint a color study. I'm just kind of searching for interesting color values and color combinations and things. Trying not to get too hung up on, whether it looks awesome or whatever. Just trying to be attentive to all these interesting little facets and features that I'm finding as I'm painting. Let's see. JD Anarchy says, have you ever drawn a really smooth paper like marker paper, and did you like it? Nah, I hated it. I drew on that Bristol paper once or twice, and I was like, nah. I thought like, oh well, a smooth paper will tend to give me like a lot of control, and so maybe that'll be interesting. But the reality was, it just meant I had to work so hard for transitions. Like I had to work for ages and ages for a transition. Um, that would have taken no time at all. Working on a paper that was had a little bit of tooth to it. So I gave up on Bristol and stuff like that pretty fast, just because again, it was just not doing the job I wanted it to do for sure. Let's see. Lots to do here. The thing too is that you'll get to this stage in the painting and you'll be really tempted to try and like close it up, right? Like you'll get in this finishing mentality where you go like, I want to, I start getting into my sharp edges and this and that. And, you know, for me, I like to try and keep my paintings really like open for as long as possible. What I mean by that is, I want to keep it free from really intense edges, at least certainly for as long as possible in a way. Um, Sometimes, you have just a few hours to paint, but that'll mean then that you do it in the last, 20 minutes. It's not difficult to pull out a few sharp edges. But what I'm trying to do here, of course, is to keep things really general, and that gives you a lot of freedom to work with color. The more kind of even your application and without, that intent to like really intensely model form just yet, gives you that flexibility to just scrub in colors and look for color intensity and diversity and stuff. Whereas you get into that finishing mentality and you start closing down those possibilities. This is really like weird oil painty stuff that if you oil paint, I think you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. If you don't oil paint, I'm going to sound like a crazy person. But that's just how it is. Stephen Arnell says, do you have any advice for someone who's interested in attending an atelier but works full time? Yeah, don't do it. I mean, if you're going to attend an atelier, it should be something that takes the vast majority of your time and attention. I mean, I don't want to like be a downer or whatever, but I remember there would be people that would try to like go to the academy and work, and I mean inevitably, it's possible to succeed doing that. However, your chances of succeeding while doing that are really, really diminished. I think that, by the way, and I'm thinking here of like that you're talking about like a full-time program that's a kind of a 9 to 4 at least, a 9 to 4 practice every day of the week, for 9 months. If that's the case, that's going to be really I mean, with a full-time job, I mean, I don't know how you do both of those. Now, other ateliers, like I guess they have different versions of like a program where you can like go part-time. Like you can take a class at an atelier. If that's what you're talking about, that's a different story. And I would say, yeah, go for it. The cool thing about taking classes is that you can eventually you can give yourself a kind of structure that allows you to say like, yeah, at this day, at this time, I'm doing this thing. I'm not doing anything else. And if anything, like that's what your work will benefit from is that dedicated kind of committed time where you are not, taking phone calls and you're not, whatever, answering emails, and you're not doing this, you're not doing that. I mean, you're not hanging out with family, frankly. I mean, painting and drawing, learning to do that stuff ultimately it takes just a ton of really dedicated time. And if you don't dedicate the time, the job gets harder and harder. Yeah. So again, not to be a downer, but I would say a full-time job and a full-time atelier can't live together. Full-time job and a part-time atelier, maybe that can live together. I could see that. I mean, for me, it was different because I moved to a different country to like attend this school. So that meant, of course, I didn't have a work permit to work in Italy. So even if I wanted to, I could not have worked. So it was a kind of a moot point. Sorry, some interesting stuff happening here, and I'm getting a little bit carried away looking at it and messing with it. So that means less focus on talking. But I'll get back to it. Let's see. Iggy J is saying, "How's your doggy?" Right now, doggy is chewing on a kitchen towel that we have repurposed as a puppy toy, and appears to be having a great job or a great time doing that job. Leo Rucker says, "Do you use medium to help layers dry faster?" Not to dry faster. I just use a bit of linseed oil to get the paint to move around a little bit more easily sometimes. Here, I don't think really I'm using that much at all. So I just have a little bit of linseed oil that I dip into sometimes to get the paint to flow a little bit more easily. But in general, no, I don't use any drying mediums like or like accelerators, right? Like paint mediums that are there to accelerate drying. I used to. I've tried all the accelerators. I'll tell you right now. I've tried the cobalt dryer. I've tried black oil. I've tried what else? I mean, you name it. And I've gone through that a period working with that dryer. What I realized eventually is that just I was just trying to get the paint to do stuff that it didn't necessarily want to do, and so I mean eventually it was just easier to just go with the flow. Try to just do what the paint wants to do and not to not to fight it so much. Yeah, just go with the flow. That's what I'd say. I mean, oil paint has some inconvenient properties, but it's got some really great properties too. So, if you're frustrated by one thing, like let's say you're frustrated by the drying time, you don't like that it dries fast. Okay, I get that. And that's totally acceptable. However, right, if you have a paint that dries like too fast, then you're not going to get to like model the forms in the way that you want to. So what you're fixing in one place, it's like, that game Whack-A-Mole, right? Like what you fix in one place is going to pop up in another or in another or in another, until you have this super complicated medium that's got a dozen different things in it, all of which like cancel each other out. And so then what are you left with? I mean, at least that was my experience. I used to use, at one point I had a combination of Canadian balsam, triple rectified turpentine, and stand oil, and that was my base medium that I would use for like most of the time that I would work on an oil painting. And it's fine, but like so's just using regular old linseed oil. It doesn't sound as clever, but it does. If you work within the system, it does the job for you that you need doing. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have like a glamorous medium story that I can tell you. This is the medium of the old masters, and it means that all your oil paintings look the way you want them to look. I just never had that experience. So yeah, for me it was a no-go. By the way, I don't even know I just like went off on a rant. I don't know. You didn't even ask about that. You just asked if I use dryers. No, I don't use any dryers. I guess that's the very short one sentence answer to your question. There is nope. So maybe next time, I'll think of being more brief with my answer. I gave you the very, very long version of it. Iggy update, by the way, she's back from her walk, of course. She's sitting by the fire, chewing on a chew toy that she has just recently been given. So all good there. Let's see. MJ Artwork is asking, how do you arrange a 5-head portrait commission? Carefully. Just look at precedents. I mean, here's the thing, right? I remember there was an artist, Malcolm Liepke, right, that was talking about it, had an interview. He was talking about essentially this subject, and he was talking about composition and saying that really, if you go through art history, almost every composition has been solved by this point. And he would go back and look at Degas and look at Degas' dancers and use the compositional ploys that Degas used in, for his paintings of dancers. He was doing these paintings, I think at the time of like a seamstress shop, maybe. But like multi-figures and all this stuff. And he said, yeah, like I just look at what Degas did, and I do, I take the solutions that he was using that were very functional, and I use those. So it's, there's plenty of precedent for, like, if you're looking for a good composition for a portrait commission. I mean, history is a grab bag of compositions. Study them, combine them, mash them up, and eventually you're going to come to a place where you have something kind of viable and interesting to use. So while I don't have an answer to that, I mean, the answer is like out there to be. The truth is out there. Is anybody old enough for the X-Files? You just got to go out there and like do your own searching, and it will practically come to you after a while. I think immediately of like Franz Hals, and his he used to do a lot of guild commissions, so there would be like a dozen members of whatever guild it was, and he'd have to chuck them all together into a composition, make it look pretty. So that is a good place to start. Franz Hals. Let's see. Rumen Plaminov says, in no time we will be getting Iggy live streams featuring some Stephen Bauman. Yeah. It'll be primarily Iggy guest starring Stephen Bauman. Ian Rodriguez is asking what my favorite paper is. There's an FAQ link in the bottom in the description of this video. I'll just refer you to that. Quick answer is I always use Stonehenge. Hikari Munkate says, how do you clean your palette? Scrape it off, chuck it in the bin, a little bit of linseed oil, I wipe the rest off. Yeah. I don't do a lot of like conditioning or anything really. I was gonna say anything really interesting. I feel like a lot of my practice is it's just like really basic and practical stuff. Yeah, I guess Cornelia. Thank you, Cornelia. Cornelia pipes in and says, "Yeah, you're so used to it." Yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for a lot of years. I used to in the beginning be afraid to like waste paint. That was like the big fear, right? Because you got these bits of paint on your palette, and like, oh God, you don't want to waste them. It's so precious. One of the things you can do actually is to get like a Tupperware, right? And you take the top off the Tupperware, you put your bits of paint onto the top of the Tupperware, you seal the Tupperware, you put that Tupperware, alternately, you could put that Tupperware in the freezer. Cornelia will pipe up and say something about condensation when you take it out and how that could get into the oil paint, yada, 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 yada. I've seen people do it for a long time, and I've not necessarily observed any negative effects myself. Not saying that they couldn't happen, they couldn't exist. I've not witnessed them with my own eyes. So I would still stand by popping your paint into the freezer and taking it out the next day, letting it come down to room temperature, and then putting it back onto your palette as a great way to slow down the oxidization process of oil paint. allowing you to let your mixtures last for a lot longer. Your precious, expensive oil paint also to last a lot longer. So that is one thing that I used to do. Nowadays, I mean, why don't I do it nowadays? Really, it's just a matter of, well, yeah, like I work at home, and frankly, I barely like to put stuff in the freezer that is like about. I put my brushes. I wrap up my brushes in plastic, and I put them in the freezer as well, rather than washing them. So there's some little things like that you can do that are maybe interesting, maybe useful. But cleaning the palette, it's usually just take the paint off, chuck the paint in the bin, and what is it, Donnie?
I put it it's a mason jar so it can be properly dispersed later.
Yeah, you could disperse.
Like recycled.
Yeah, like so if you're really going by the book, then you're gonna want to consider that your oil paint is like hazardous waste, and that you should actually probably save that waste to be taken to a dump where there are facilities for which that paint can be properly disposed of, because of course there are like heavy metals and things in the paint. It's not great stuff to be chucking around in the environment. So anyway, there's a lot of different things that you can do. For me, I just kind of clean off the palette with a bit of linseed oil and get on with, usually, as devotees to my live streams will know, I do that, and then I go cook dinner for Cornelia and myself. And now for Iggy as well. Let's see. James asks, "Hey, Stephen, I have the opportunity to go and study at the Barcelona Academy of Art next year. I was wondering what your opinions of the schools are, if you have any." Got tons of opinions, James. Let's see. Jordi is a cool guy. Know him from his days in Florence, and I think that he's kind of reproducing a good program there. So the Barcelona Academy could probably be like a really cool place to be. And I mean, you're in Barcelona, so it's not bad either, right? Even though Lionel Messi has gone, Barcelona still retains a certain amount of charm. There's all those great Fortuny paintings at the museum there up on the hill. What else? Yeah, I think it's probably a really good school. I think doesn't Dorian Eaton, doesn't he teach there still? Anyway, yeah. So I think it's probably a good school. I mean, I visited the campus. What is it like? Many years ago now, like 5 or 6, 7 years ago now. And they've moved campuses since then. So I don't have anything to like say about where they're at now. I mean, as far as facilities are concerned, but I just know Jordi kind of has his stuff together, or seems to, and so probably it's a pretty nice place to be. That's my guess. Let's see. Sombernaut says, "Your work is amazing. Do you have any recommendations of artists that work using acrylics?" Whoa. No, I don't think I do. Artists using acrylics? Hey, listen, people, let's crowdsource this, right? Like, I don't have my eye on that. So if anybody here knows, if you're watching, somebody using acrylics that's worth taking a peek at, please just chuck in the comments. And Sombernaut, hopefully you will benefit from some crowdsourced insight here. As unfortunately, I do not have anything to offer in that realm. Juice Drinker, great screen name, says, "Before studying abroad, did you work previously to fund your education, or did loans and grants help?" There's a little bit of everything. Let me tell you, it was I worked every summer after the academy. I'd either be going back to the States, working, waiting tables. I stayed in Florence one summer and was just modeling for portrait courses. And yeah, I mean, just trying to stay afloat any way that you can. I mean, at a certain point, you get to this place where it's like, I'm 2 years in, you know, I think if I keep it up, I know I can finish, and you know, you really want to like get through your education, and so you just do just about anything you can to like sort that out, you know. And that's what I did. A lot of it was waiting tables and working. I got for my third year at the academy, I did take out a student loan. Um, yeah, yeah, everything you can do to just keep it going. That's what you got to do. You know, otherwise, yeah, otherwise you got to call it quits. I mean, you know, a lot of people work their butts off and tried really hard, and eventually things didn't line up. You know, it's really tough to get like a full, you know, 3 years at an atelier. Is not an easy accomplishment. You know, to have. Um, but you just kind of got to give it everything, and see where that takes you. I mean, if you're intent upon succeeding, I would say, you know, like I wouldn't say to anybody that oh, you have to do it, or you have to go 3 years of the academy, you even have to go at all, you know, like depending upon your mentality, there's a lot of ways to succeed. Going to a school can be really good, uh, you know, provided everything falls into place the way that it's supposed to. You know, yeah. Anyway, uh, what's the next? Sorry, I just got kind of lost in paint and my brain. Ruben Blanco says, at what point should you go from only drawing to drawing and painting? Is it better to start early? How was your transition? I always painted because before I went to the school, the academy, I kind of, you know, I wanted to be an artist already anyway. So I had a studio, and I was like working and making terrible paintings, and uh, being eccentric and all this stuff that you do when you're an artist, I guess. And uh, yeah, so when I came to the school, like I was already painting like on the side. You know, I would go home, I would go to my apartment, and I'd paint at home. You know, and you know, when school hours were out. So for me, it was always something I was doing anyway, which I think eventually was a benefit because, you know, going in between painting and drawing, it can be a little bit of a rocky process. You know, like if you don't have any experience with what oil paint kind of tends to do on its own, then it can be like weird because you figured out all this stuff in drawing, but then it's like it doesn't. The manufacture of an oil painting is a different procedure than making a drawing. For those of you that oil paint, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you can figure out how like shadow and light and all that stuff works while drawing, but if you're trying to like render a drawing, it's very different than rendering an oil painting. So you got to get kind of used to an almost totally different process. That's kind of what I'm talking about. So when I say manufacture, I just mean actually to make a shadow edge look like a shadow edge. You do different stuff with oil paint than you do with graphite. You know, like creating transitions. It's not just about filling in holes in the paper. It's very much about like finding the appropriate colors and values to like kind of turn the form. And that's just a different vibe altogether. Which, by the way, how are we doing here? Am I getting anything done? I don't know. I'm always kind of questioning that, whether anything's happening. I'm sure for those of you like that are watching these live streams, it looks like literally nothing is happening. But I bet if you go back to the beginning of the stream, if you just cycle back, you know, after the stream is over, that you'll see something happen for sure. Just got to get these eyes to pop a little bit. Need those blue eyes to pop. That's kind of what I wanted in this one. Is I wanted blue eyes to really be kind of set off in terms of their color from the rest of the world around it. That's hard. That's hard to do. You know. By the way, how long are we into the stream? I feel like we've just been here for a minute, but I bet it's been a little while. Let's see. Saris asks, when do you put the lights? I don't know what the lights are. Maybe the highlights in the eyes? I don't know. I'll put them in when the time is right. It's probably one of the last things that I do is, you know, to work on things like the highlights in the eyes and stuff, because it's so it's just like a topical kind of detail that's, in a way, it's pretty easy to just chuck them in. It's all the other stuff that I'm doing like underneath that I feel like is the actual work of making an oil painting. You know, that's what I find kind of challenging. I can hear Cornelia talking with Iggy right now. I think they're having a conversation about how cute Iggy is. As far as I can tell from the whispers on the other side of the room. Is that good for live? Is this good fodder for live streaming? I'm sure you people must be totally annoyed at all the puppy interjections. Or not. Or you're puppy people and you get it. Maybe you people get it. Maybe that's the truth. Let's see. Madeline Pater says, if you didn't have alizarin crimson, what would be your choice to substitute it? What? Rose madder? Maybe? Cornelia, have you ever used rose madder? She says, boo. She doesn't know. It's the only other transparent red like that I can think of.
It's kind of like a quinacridone.
Is quinacridone transparent?
Yeah, quinacridone comes in very many different versions.
Okay.
But you can get a quinacridone that is very similar to the traditional alizarin crimson.
Let me just relay that. So Cornelia is saying that quinacridone, that there are many different versions of like a quinacridone red that could be, some could be transparent and have similar properties to what alizarin has. So I guess the answer there has got to be quinacridone. That's what I would guess.
Yeah, or anti-quinacridone, one of the two.
By the way, I would not be fulfilling my YouTube responsibilities if I didn't say, pretty please everybody, smash the like button and subscribe to the channel if you think the content is fun, cool, interesting, yada, yada, yada. Those little things cost you nothing and help me a whole bunch. So if you would do that, that would be super awesome. And if you aren't already, I get the feeling that everybody that watches these are already patrons of mine. But if you aren't and you want to learn about the stuff that I do, check out my Patreon page, Stephen Bauman Artwork /Patreon. Let me see. Actually, I might even have like an overlay. Hang on. I don't know why I don't put this up. I'm such a bad YouTuber. Whoa. We're like going behind the curtain here. Hang on. I should have like somewhere on here like an overlay where I can put that up on screen. Oh well, whatever. Live production sucks. What question is next? Why not clean brushes? Iberville Music says, it just takes time. Sometimes you don't want to take the time to do it. Iggy J says, Stephen, when do you plan to paint St. Andrew's cast? Oh no, plan St. Andrew's cast group critique. I can't find it on Patreon. It's just not there yet. I haven't recorded it yet, so I'm gonna pre-record that one. Just because time is tight right now, and I don't really have time to schedule other live streams, so I'm gonna pre-record it. And the answer to when that's gonna be is as soon as humanly possible. Which is not today, but soon. You know, I mean, soon is when I can promise it, and not any sooner than that. Cornelia laughed at that answer. Hopefully, that did something for you folks who want to know the answer to that. I just can't. It's just time's like crazy right now. Like I can't like promise things. You know, so I'd rather just say, you know, I can get to it when I can get to it, and I can't get I can't get to it any sooner than that, because there's a whole lot of stuff already in the calendar. Let's see. Felipe Klen says, do you recommend as a first attempt to paint going after the masters and painting as much copies as we can first, or the fundamentals as painting a ball, a still life, etc.? I really love your work. Yeah, Felipe, actually, what you're talking about is something that is going on my Patreon next month. So December 1st. People, pay attention. This is awesome. And I think underrated. You want to talk about projects that people sleep on, that students sleep on. Painting the sphere and properly mixing your values is a project that more people need to do. So many of the fundamental, like basic problems, right? So I work with mentorship students. I have about 30 people that I work with, right? And I'm critiquing their work every single month. And I will tell you that most of the things that I'm telling them about fixing their work, I'm drawing them a diagram of a sphere. I'm pointing on the sphere to the things that are illustrating in that controlled environment the stuff that they need to fix in their very complex painting, right? Understanding the sphere in graphite and in oil paint and eventually in color means that you can practice those concepts so that when you arrive at a very complex situation, you have all of that knowledge, all of that skill that you learned kind of painting and rendering out the sphere. You've got that with you, and you can use that in your more complex subjects. So December 1st, I'm going to be putting out a lesson on mixing values with a palette knife on your palette, and also painting the sphere. So in Grisaille. So stay tuned for that if you're on Patreon. If you are not there yet and you're trying to figure out oil painting, what are you doing? Get on Patreon for $10 and start to get down to all of the Atelier tier lessons that are going to build you up to be ready to tackle oil paint confidently. That's my big pitch, folks. So I would recommend to you, to fulfill the basics, right? Try to get, and I'm talking here to Felipe Klen, sort out the bottom line, like fundamental stuff, like painting a sphere, like learning to mix value, like learning your kind of design concepts, that you're going to need to use in every project that you're ever going to do after that. Let's see. Rumen Plamanov says, do you do the same block-in when doing a watercolor portrait? What is your process in general? Watercolor, I definitely do a sketch beforehand, do a drawing beforehand. I don't wing it when it comes to watercolor. But then, with watercolor, you're working with like successive light layers of color. So I tend to start with the darkest areas, just kind of blocking in the design and trying to get everything to work properly from a proportional perspective. And then after that, you just kind of build out into the light. So like some of the last areas that you really address are some of like the lightest areas, like the halftones in the lightest areas. By the way, I'm getting super distracted here. Ooh, hard to focus. Ian Rodriguez says, there's an artist in Ontario named CJ Shelton who draws amazing animals and mandalas with acrylic. So to the previous person who was asking about artists who work in acrylic, you've got one of your answers there, CJ Shelton. So give it a look, and if you like it, you can send a thank you to Ian Rodriguez. Also, Rumen Plamanov is saying to Sombernaut, I like Dean Mitchell's acrylic paintings. Don't know Dean Mitchell, but Rumen's got a good eye, so let's say that Dean Mitchell is probably an interesting painter to check out. All right. All right. Paul Aguilar says, on that note, how do you fund your art education? Being an artist is mainly about enduring. Am I right? Tenacity. There's that theme again. Tenacity is like such a big deal. If you just outlast all the other people who stopped doing it. You know, you got a pretty good chance to become successful. Um, so how to fund it creatively? I think the intimidating thing for people is that there's not like one career path for painting. In fact, probably the way that you think it's going to work, it's not really going to work like that. Like if you'd asked me, 10 years ago, oh, what's it going to look like when you're a professional? Say, oh, just send my work to galleries and, I don't know, they'll just sell it and that's it. That's how it'll work. The reality is, I think it's just as hard to be a professional artist, like to make a living as an artist, as it is to figure out how to do the stuff that you're trying to do. So like making a painting is pretty challenging, right? Well, selling a painting is challenging, making a living is challenging. The big myth, I think, is that it's much harder than anything else. I think that all jobs like are challenging, are difficult. It's not like, I don't know, people get this idea like painting is supposed to be easy or something. Like once you become like a good painter, then it's all supposed to like fall in your lap. But like you wouldn't say that if you're an architect. You go like, oh, I know how to like design a building, so everything after should be easy, right? Like no, the career is hard because it's competitive and companies rise and fall and there's a natural ebb and flow to your professional life. And I think for artists, only because you're the kind of sole proprietor, you're the small business owner, I think maybe that's the intimidating thing for people, is that it feels like it's less secure because you're the one responsible for it. But I think in the end, actually, I'm never going to fire myself. So actually I got a pretty secure gig, or at least that's like looking on the bright side of things. Right. Let's see. Iberville Music says, is camera perpendicular to the canvas or at an angle? Yeah, no, the camera is coming in at an angle like this, so she's really like squeezed from left to right. So you're seeing a very different kind of proportional version of her than what she actually is. So yeah, eventually I'll probably put out on Instagram or Patreon somewhere. I'll put out like a perspective fixed version of this. I don't keep the edges of the paper on the camera because it kind of looks meh. It's like wasted space. But if they were there, you would see, that it's like kind of in perspective, in depth. Let's see. Barburao Pudi says, hey, Stephen, how long did it take you to achieve the precision? I'm still working on it. Goku Dinesh says, hey, man, when's the episode for drawing from life happening? I don't know, like when the COVID numbers in Norway aren't as high as they are. That'll be a good place to start. Yeah, I don't know. It's just working from life. In terms of like arranging models and all that stuff is it's a lot to kind of orchestrate. And I've done it for videos before, like the video I did for Proco was me working from life. It's just super impractical for like what I'm doing now, so I just don't do it. Phyllis Riley says she loves dog talk. Please let us have another peek at him. Cornelia, do we want to have an Iggy moment?
Sure, I've had them over.
All right, Iggy's coming. People, this is happening. I think she's in a pretty excited mood. We might get an excited Iggy. It's happening. It's coming.
She loves this new bone.
All right. Let's see.
You have to hold that bone.
All right, we gotta hold the bone. I got the bone. Hold on.
Okay.
All right, Iggy, you've got your bone. Ooh. So we've got little Iggy here. All she can focus on is the bone. We're just gonna hang out for a second. Iggy, do you want to say hi to the people? No. She's a little bit in her own vibe. Oh, and now she's freaking out.
Let's bring it back.
That's Iggy time, folks.
Yeah. Not the sleepiest of puppies.
There we go.
Okay.
You got it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll see you, little Iggy. Like I'm ever gonna say no to Iggy time. Like I'm ever, as a proud parent, going to go, no, I'm not gonna show you the dog. Let's see. Paul Aguilera says, should I do your figure drawing tutorial before your workshop, or will it be like a standalone thing? Yeah, so, oh, man, people, I got so much stuff like on the docket of like things that are in process, and they all conflict with each other. So this will be like a nice window into the professional life of an artist. So I'll tell you basically like what I have going on right now. So I'm working with one guy to develop extensive notes for all of the lessons in my entire Patreon catalog. So we're talking 400 hours, 500 hours of video being put into text and image-based notes. So I got this freelancer working on that. And I have meetings with him like every week to kind of push these along and do rewrites and get everything up to snuff. And that's like one thing I got going on. Another thing I got going on is I got a 3D modeler working on a planes of the head model to go along with the proportions of the 3D skull that I had made as well. And eventually those are going to come out as like physical products. Now that's something that I also like have kind of going on the side. And I'm meeting also with that freelancer and trying to make sure that everything there kind of conforms to the vision that I have for that project. After that, I've got obviously my monthly commitment to my Patreon subscribers to release content, and I have my weekly schedule of live streaming where I am coming to you guys live here to talk about everything. In addition to that, I've got my mentorship students that I work with every month. I do that about 4 days a month. I work with my mentorship students, all checking out their individual projects and their progress and keeping track of that and working with them and talking with them and sending them screen grabs of some of the corrections that we make to their work. In addition to that, I attempt as much as possible to have like a normal life with Cornelia. Sometimes I have more time for that than others. But that's the idea, is to also have like a normal life alongside that. The question was the workshop, the figure drawing workshop. Also, I'm developing a new website, which is a new version of Stephen Bauman artwork. Now, the website that I have now is primarily for Patreon navigation. So if you want to find your way through all my Patreon tutorials, that's what that website is, stephenbaumanartwork.com. It has an easy way to get through everything. But it's kind of limited. So I'm developing another website, which will eventually be stephenbaumanartwork.com. But it will allow me to do, live workshops. It'll allow me to put my my lessons into a much more kind of user-friendly user interface. For those of you not in the in the web design industry, that would be called UI. It'll be abbreviated as UI. Also can be called UX, so user experience. So it's a website that basically is like way better at delivering content than what Patreon is. So exciting there. But that's like yet another like sideline that I have going on. As a professional artist, this is probably going to be a little bit what your life is like. You're going to have, hopefully, a lot of different things going on that are challenging and interesting and keep you stimulated and keep keep the lights on, frankly. I mean, that's the big game behind all of it, is like how to keep everything ticking over and keeping your livelihood happening, working. So that's what I've got going on. The figure drawing workshop will happen. It's been backburnered because I have a couple other things that kind of got in the way of planning that. So I needed to just take a pause on preparing it, but it's in the mix with everything else that's going on. And definitely as soon as I have something to say, I will say about it. In terms of the figure drawing lesson that's on my Patreon for now, it's a good lesson. Put a lot of work into it, and I think that you'll definitely get some valuable kind of practical lessons about figure drawing from that. So for sure, go for it, and the practice there will prepare you pretty well for what you're going to need to do in the later workshop that will be coming, that is in development, but is not yet coming to fruition. Wow. So that was super boring for everybody. Sorry about that. But I had to answer the question as well as I could. Right. So somebody with a name that is written in a language that I cannot read, so sorry for that, says, here's my question. Can layers be applied on top of each other without them having medium? If so, how long will it take for the painting to dry? Well, the answer to that question is that, for sure, layers of paint can be applied on top of other layers of paint. You don't have to use a lot of medium in your oil paint. In fact, depending upon the ground that you're working on and the paint that you're using, probably a lot of times the less paint the better, or the less medium the better. How long it will take to dry all depends upon how thick you paint it. It depends upon the oils that are present within the oil paint that you're using. It depends upon the surface or the ground that you're working on. So there's a lot of things working in conjunction with each other that will dictate what's going to happen in terms of your drying time. So it's not like, hey, what medium is it? Oh, that's drying time. Or, oh, hey, what kind of oil paint is it? Like all these things work in unison to kind of create a drying time that is, it's like an equation, it's a lot of different variables. And then when those variables are understood, then you could start to estimate what will happen vis-a-vis drying time. Yeah, and also like each pigment, has different rate of oil absorption and different properties in terms of how well or fast or whatever that it dries. So again, that's another thing in that equation of what creates drying time. It's almost worth a video itself just to say, like, maybe say it like that, like what creates drying time. What are the variables that you need to think about and understand if you're attempting to manage or manipulate the drying time of your oil painting. Everybody thinks they want it to dry faster, but I'm not sure if that's always true. Lou N says, how do you mix the colors so accurately? I paint with oils and often struggle to match the colors to the reference. It's just about relationships. It's all about relationships and learning to kind of see color properly. So I can't really say to you like, oh, how do you do that? I mean, you practice like crazy. I mean, that's the start. But I'm a believer, and I've said this for years, is how I teach color, is that there is a technique to seeing color. It's not luck, and it's not just practice. There's actually practical steps and exercises that you need to, or not really exercises, but the word I want to use is like what is the word I want to use? I've been talking for a while now, and I've started to lose my words. But there is, like a series of steps to like how do you see color? Well, you start by picking out the paradigm. So you understand, like, if you're looking for warm and cold temperatures, we define what those are on the color wheel. Then we search for the appearance of them in their most intense form within the picture plane that we're working on, right? So again, like this stuff is all very mechanical for me. Now, eventually, color interpretation, that's where we get like things get juicy and get interesting, because you're starting to like kind of take choices about color. But at first you just have to learn the basics of like Literally, how do you see this stuff? Which, just FYI, I'm gonna take my opportunity to plug here and say, coming in January, right, we're gonna do the sphere painting. So we're going to be working on a flesh tone sphere. So December is going to be the value sphere, so a sphere in grisaille, and then January is going to be the sphere in color. And that's going to be also flesh tone mixing, which has been a promise that I have long made to my Patreon subscribers, that I will be doing a flesh tone mixtures lesson, and this will be that lesson. So that's coming in January. And so will be also, by the way, the techniques, in terms of like how to see color. It's not mysterious. It's highly reproducible. All you have to do is understand the spectrums in which you are working. Which I'll be very happy to explain. Is this painting coming along? I think it's okay. I think it's actually, I kind of like some of the stuff that's going on here. I kind of like, that's about as far as I can get these days. MW says, hi Stephen, what brand of oil paint are you using and what brand do you recommend when you're just starting out to oil paint? Hey, FAQs, those are down in the description of this video. You can find out literally everything about the stuff that I use from those FAQs. I'll just tell you real quick. This is a Le Frankenbourgeois titanium white, Old Holland yellow brown, Old Holland alizarin crimson extra, Becker's raw umber, Old Holland cobalt blue, and a Michael Harding ivory black. So that's the quick version. But hit that link. It'll take you to my Patreon page. It's free post. You can find out all that stuff you want. JD Anarchy is asking when is the next skull. JD, I'll tell you, man, the day that I can like plan anything out, that'll be the day that the skull comes. I will be drawing skulls again. It's just a matter of time. But right now, like it's about survival. Little Iggy takes all of that attention. Little Iggy, when I'm thinking, hey, I'll start planning out my live stream, Iggy goes, hey, I want to chew on this thing over there that I'm not supposed to chew on. And then I have to like jump up and go get her and make sure she doesn't chew. But I don't want her to be unhappy. So I got to like placate her as well, while also stopping her from chewing. And then she's got to take a walk. She can't just sit inside all day. She's got to take Iggy out, which is kind of why you get a dog, so you can like go out for walks and things. But all that stuff just means my capacity, my ability to control, the planning of my time is so limited right now. Cornelia says, accurately, that we will get into a rhythm, and we'll figure out exactly how to make that work. I have no doubt about it, but that the current place that we are in, we've just had her for about 10 days or so, is just like keep our heads above water, keep ourselves fed, and herself fed. Like that's my big ambition right now, is to not have anybody in the house starve. So if I accomplish that, then I will be like gold medalist in, puppy living. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. Let's see, a lot of people accurately calling Iggy super cute. That's very true. Live painting of Iggy coming up, Rico asks. Well, obviously that's coming. Ruben Plamanov says, do you have any particular ideas or thoughts about art that were radically debunked when you trained formally? Yeah, sure. I mean, well, let's say that radically debunked. I want to... Wait, what is it?
Everything's just much more relative.
Yeah, Cornelia says that everything's much more relative. I think you kind of discover, in a way, that, yeah, the whole thing is kind of shades of gray, I mean, you like to think that oh, it's kind of this way and the world's this way and this is how this works and that's how that works. That's really convenient, really comfortable to kind of think that. But yeah, you find out like training, oh, it can also work this other way. Like there's so many like paths, so many different kind of paths that you can take to kind of make valid, interesting, exciting, or even boring artwork or whatever you want to make. There's so many ways to get there. It's as diverse as the amount of people that are doing it, and we're all obviously completely unique. I mean, we share a lot of characteristics, but my point is like none of us can be totally the same, and so like the art making process cannot be homogenized in that way. You can't say it's like this or it's like that. You just kind of have to accept a little bit the state of relativity, which is probably why I like kind of drawing so much and I rely on technical things so much, because I feel like they are far less relative than for instance things about art making and so on. It's also why my Patreon, it's about techniques, concepts, learning, design, things that I feel are reproducible and are relatively universal. Rather than like you get into art making, it's a big conversation of like, well, who knows? We believe it's one thing until it's another. Yeah. Cornelia says it's a good question, Ruben. So some positive vibes there. Jose Canizares says, what kind of lights do you use? Right now, I've got two Dracast Daylight 12 by 12 LED panels. I think they have each about 1,000 LED diodes in them. And then I also have an Aperture Lightstorm 120D Mark II with a 24-inch softbox that is octagonal with a white interior and a diffuser that is actually lighting my face. So I've got 3 lights in this setup, 2 different cameras, 1 mic, and that's what I got. All of that, actually, the lighting info, I think I have also in the FAQs if you want to get down to that as well. MW says the idea is to put all your lessons in a book. The long-term view is that, yeah. The short-term view is basically what I'm trying to do with making these lesson notes is basically to solve a problem, right? So let's say you have this problem. You've got 400 hours of great drawing and painting advice. And as a student, you want to remember this one thing, Well, how do you get through those 400 hours of tape, right? What I'm doing with these notes is trying to make, in a way, like not quite an appendix to my tutorials, but in a way, something that is quick and referential and visual, and helps you kind of understand and get through these concepts. And also allows you to kind of track and trace, so you can kind of go back and remember them anew or learn them anew from a text. It's just yet another way to kind of deepen the learning experience that you have, using my Patreon tutorials. So that's what the whole deal is about. Why I'm doing this now. The fact that I am always very ambitious about just about everything means that I have considered, well, if I'm making these notes and I'm assembling them and I'm rewriting them and like working on them and trying to do all this like cool stuff to them, well, why don't I simultaneously make sure that they are formatted in such a way that cumulatively they could fit together in a book? So that is the kind of short-term and long-term version of kind of why I'm doing these notes and kind of what I'm planning on doing with them. So in the short term, it's to help Patreon become a little bit more like accessible and trackable, and then eventually, yeah, sure, why not? Let's make a book. Ooh, that was too light. Ooh, that was too light. Oh, that value was bad. That was a bad value, people. That's what it looks like when values go wrong. Right there. Yeah, you never know when you're brush mixing. Let's see. Whitney Studio says, is it difficult for me to imagine how on earth you can focus on your values with so much white surrounding your image and do a live stream with so many topics to discuss? Yeah, I get that. The live stream thing is practice. The values thing is practice. I used to have a big problem actually comparing values with white. And that it was completely down to like how I trained, like how I studied. It was so much about, this focus on luminosity, which, is good, it's great, it's functional, it's happy, it gets viewers to be kind of stimulated, and all things are good about it. But it meant like I was always really distracted by working on white. Like the first thing I'd have to do is like wash in the background and kind of get rid of it. Over the years, I've just practiced different things, and it doesn't really bother me that much anymore. So it's not like a big paradigm shift. It's just with time, I can kind of ignore it now. So that, yeah, it's kind of weird though. Working with a lot of white in the background and the surrounding areas of the painting, especially when the source image has like a dark background. Ivoryville Music says, color value relationships are greater than perfect hues. You know it. Aura Mansour says, the painting is coming along beautifully. Thank you so much. Selim Turgut says, hey, Stephen, do you have any tips for the sweaty hands? Wow, true. Do you have any tips for sweaty hands while drawing? Cornelia, do you have any tips for sweaty hands while drawing?
I have that issue too.
Cornelia has that issue too. Do you have any tips though? We need tips.
Towel nearby.
She says have a towel nearby. I feel like everybody's gonna know that one though. I wanted like an insider, professional grade tip about what to do. She doesn't. She's laughing. She doesn't have one. Yeah, I don't have a. We got nothing on that. I'm sorry. Sweaty palms is a bummer. I guess here's the thing. Do they get sweaty relative to room temperature? Is it the room temperature that's making them sweaty? Because like I know when I'm live streaming in the summertime here in Norway, oh my goodness, like before, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, it can get like it can be really terrible to live stream, like especially like where my studio is in the house. But sweaty palms, I feel like is that nerves or is that the ambient temperature in the room? You tell me. Let's crowdsource that one as well. Sweaty palm solutions. This is where we're at, people. This is what's happening live right now. Sweaty palm solutions. Let's see. Howard Duck says, how do you stay motivated and wanting to paint? When I was young and hungry, it was all I could do to get better constantly. As an adult, as a grown-up, it's a matter of just professionality, like you come in with your lunch pail and you kind of get to work. I almost try not to think about that part of it that's like motivation-wise, you set targets for yourself. These YouTube live streams, for instance, this is something that it's not coincidence. It's something like deeply engineered that I think, I really wanted to do this. I think that's YouTube is actually probably the best place for the content that I make, because it's so easy to go long form on YouTube. You have people's attention for a lot longer. You guys and girls are out there like watching this. We're passing the hour and a half mark, and I'm still having people like watching and asking questions and things. Other social platforms are different. Like they have different pacing. So you gotta like set targets and also be realistic with yourself, by the way. But you gotta set targets and take it really, really seriously. I think that's the way to get anything done. But that's absolutely what I do in terms of staying motivated. It's like, making sure that I know what my goals are. I know that I'm not gonna get to like 50,000 subscribers if I don't live stream. If I'm tired this week. By the way, it'd be really, really easy for me right now to justify not live streaming this week, with Iggy and Cornelia and life and everything. You know, there's a lot of ways you can convince yourself it's fantastic not to do something, but I got those long-term goals in mind, and I know I want to hit them. Let's see. MW says, Steven, I have to go, but we'll look at your Patreon page. This video really inspires me. That's awesome. Mohammad Rizaldi says, thanks for the live stream. How do you use medium in a layered painting with fat over lean rules? Do we have to add medium with more oil than previous layer in each brush stroke? Yeah, well, see, that's where it gets a little bit tricky, isn't it? I mean, are you like, how fat over lean is fat over lean? Like, because for instance with this, some areas I painted with a little bit more oil, some areas I painted with a little bit less oil. So does that mean that some areas are fatter than others and other areas are leaner than others? Well, yeah, kind of, it does. So how do you kind of track that? I think fat over lean is one of those things where it's like you want to, it's not like hitting a bullseye. It's like just hitting the target. Like, just try not to use tons of oil in the lower layers of your painting, and try not to use, you know, like really, really lean paint at the top layer of your painting. Aside from that, like, I don't know, like it's, I don't think it's like a thing that, you know, like scientists in a lab are like extracting with an eyedropper, you know, X amount of oil for this phase of the paint. Like, it doesn't really work like that. You got to paint to paint. But you want to like keep these concepts in mind as a practical, what's the word, guide to making an archival painting. So best case scenario, don't get like too obsessed about it. But just understand that you want to be relatively fat over relatively lean. That's my advice about it. Other people tell you that you gotta be there with your eyedropper and everything's gotta be perfect. And I don't want to dissuade you from listening to them either. They've got a valid point of view about it, but it's not my point of view. Let's see. Mariah asks, so you put any gesso on your canvas? Well, this is paper. It's made to be painted on, so it doesn't have any gesso, any ground on it whatsoever. Jose Canizares says, I see you have a prominent contour line from the cheek to the chin. Do you think that works better since the background is white? I actually took a choice over here because I realized I had painted too much cheek out here. And so I was cutting back in. And I could have cut back in with white. But then I was like, do I want to cut back in with white? Or do I want to cut back in with like a dark value? I chose a dark value. I feel okay about it. Because I don't feel amazing about it. But it is what it is. You know, if I really like dig into this painting and really, really keep going, probably I'll start integrating some element of background there. Rather than just leaving it as a line. So that's just like how it is at the moment, not maybe reflective of how it is or will be perpetually. Not that I mind it. That's just how it is for now. Let's see. Yeah, JD Anarchy is asking, are you going to paint the background of this painting? JD, you never know, man. These things are like little improvisations. I mean, this could just stay that way forever. I don't know. Mariah says, do you prefer drawing from photos? Yeah, I don't know. I like drawing and painting. You know, if it's from a photo, that's okay. If it's from life, that's okay too. I like drawing and painting. And I don't really discriminate in those ways. I'll say that, you know, drawing and painting from life can be really fun and engaging because you got that energy of like a model there in the room, and you're kind of driven and focused because it's all kind of happening in the moment. So that's really like fun and exciting. Aside from that, I don't really have I like both. I like both. That should be on my gravestone. You know, I just don't have like this binary personality where it's like I have to do one thing or I have to do another thing. It's kind of like, oh, you tell me there's things that are cool about painting from life? Oh, that's really cool. And there's like cool stuff about painting from photographs, like, oh yeah, that's cool too, you know. So whatever, you know, people get so hung up trying to create what is essentially, it's not a false dichotomy. Maybe it's an exaggeration to call it a false dichotomy. Let's be honest. Let's be real. There's a difference in between the two. Experientially, not sure if it tracks that there's a difference results wise. That like if you paint it from life, it's gonna have this different effect that it couldn't have if you painted from a photograph. I haven't found that to be true at all. But certainly the experience of doing each one is a bit different. You can definitely say that. Color values be close together at this stage. Yeah. Yeah, this is where, a little bit of difference goes a long way. And I'm not even like, wow, I got a long way to go. I mean, that's, if anything, that's what I discover live streaming is that like talking slows down your work like to a snail's pace. Whitney Studio says, on the sweaty palms, see a doctor. There are treatments depending upon the cause. I don't know if she's being serious or not. I can't tell. Let's see. Selim Turgut says, it's always... He's going on more about the sweaty palms. I'm not gonna subject everybody else to that as well. Let's see. Ebube says, do you always start from the place of midtones and move to the extremes of values? Do you see any merit in working from the reverse? Well, I think when I started out, I worked in the reverse because it was always like, oh, key your darks and key your lights and then kind of find all the stuff in between. And that's just what I was told, so I did that. In the long run, doing my own kind of self-improvement and study and research, I discovered that I think it's way more efficient to do it the other way. And obviously, there are a few painters in art history who have a similar feeling about that, namely John Singer Sargent. Maybe you've heard of him. Carlos Duran. So that kind of changed my perspective about working, like how I develop values in a painting. So nowadays it's all about middle out, rather than going for the extremes and then like trying to paint the rest of it kind of around that. I'm sure there's people that do it. It's a preference thing. I mean, in the end, right? If you paint, and you're good at painting, like you're gonna find a way to find a good solution. Doing it like kind of no matter how you get into it. But I just think it's really efficient to do it this way. So I got a color value emergency here. Has to be fixed. This is, folks. Can't focus on questions for a minute when you have a true color value emergency. Like some of the blues that I'm trying to hit in here are really like demanding. If I get a whisper of them wrong, it's kind of a disaster. Does anybody remember that comedian Eddie Izzard? Fantastic comedian. I thought he was a genius. But he was I guess you'd say he's a cross-dresser, I think. I don't know if that's the right thing to say, but that's, so he would do his stand-up dressed as a woman. And he had this bit where he would talk about like how dangerous that is, because it's like, if you're just a guy and you come out and you trip and you fall over, it's like really embarrassing. But if you're a guy wearing heels and you come out on stage and you trip and you fall over, it's like a disaster. Anyway, with these like blues up here, like if you're trying them and you miss, it's really bad. Like if you're just doing a pretty like down the middle, all my color values are kind of warm and orangey, and you mess that up, it's like, oh, you kind of messed that up. But if you mess up like all the blues and like greens and stuff in flesh tones, it's like, it's really bad. You don't come back from that. That's why I'm like squinting down and super focused for a minute here. I'll tell you what, I do like this second layer on the oil paper. I gotta tell you that I think it's doing all of the stuff that I want it to do really nicely. Better than I expected. I didn't think the second layer would be all that pleasant to work on. Let's see. All right, yeah, questions coming in. Carmen Bowers says, hi, Stephen and Cornelia. Cornelia, you got a hello.
Hello.
She says hello back. She says, great live stream. Has given me the zap I needed to pick up pencils and carry on working on the cast of St. Andrew. People! St. Andrew cast is awesome. Definitely one of the most fun times I've had, like making a Patreon lesson. So check it out if you haven't yet. It's a steep hill, so she says thank you so much to you both. Let's see. Alejandro Alvarado says, hi, Stephen. I focus on drawing in graphite on your Patreon, but watching you painting really motivates me. I've learned a lot from your tutorials. Thank you very much. No worries. Yeah, and listen, pick up a paintbrush. It's not the... You want to, like, make friends with the stuff. And eventually you just got to like spend some time together, getting to know each other and getting to know all the weird little quirks and strange little ins and outs of working in oil. That way it's not like shocking. All right, let's go. Let's get to puppy psychology here, right? So what you want to do with your dog early on is you want to introduce him or her to a lot of different experiences because our dog, she is putting together right now like her schemata for the universe, right? So if she learns when she's very young, that this thing is dangerous or this is scary or whatever, like that's how she thinks about things. So we try now to give her as many different experiences as possible so that she can kind of have a well-rounded view of the world. When you're a young painter, I think that, a young artist, you're just starting to kind of, learn how to do this stuff. I think, definitely experience some things. Try watercolor. You don't have to spend 9 months working with it, but like just give it a shot. See what happens. Maybe, by the way, maybe you love it. Maybe you don't at all. Maybe you never do it again. But just pick it up and see what it is. I think in terms of, drawing and painting, oil painting, I definitely adhere to the, what's his name? The Harold Speed idea that it's very practical for a student to learn drawing and painting somewhat simultaneously to where you'll be, figuring out what oil paint does, like what it will and won't do, like these manufacturing issues that I was talking about earlier, while you're learning to draw. That way, when you come to the time when you need to paint, by the way, because transitioning from painting to drawing is not so easy, but you're going to need to do it at some point, and you don't want to be like just jumping into that fresh without any like sense of how that stuff works. Like you want to get some background in how it works, and that's what we're trying to do when we're learning like or practicing both of them at the same time. Oh, that was a horrible color value. Worst color. That was awful. Worst brushstroke of the whole live stream right there. Oh, man. Play that one back. Ugh. Terrible. Oh, my God. Let's fix that. It's a good thing about oil paint, you know, it's always very fixable. Sometimes you gotta let it dry, but it's generally very friendly to certain kinds of errors. All right, let's see a couple more questions. I think the stream's got to die pretty soon here. We gotta go. Tom says, just watching the first part of this painting. Just sub to your Patreon. Todd, welcome to the club, and don't forget to get on the Discord. By the way, my Discord server is for the public, but also there's patron only sections where you can like critique each other's work and stuff. So if you're looking for, you know, like getting people, you know, getting together, motivated in a group, etc., Discord's a great place for that. And it comes with a subscription. Stephen Arnell says, if you're just beginning your art journey now, at this point in your life, how would you go about your education? Loving the streams, by the way. How would I go about it right now? I would like totally niche down. I would get into, you know, really, I would like probably just do portraiture. And I would focus on, you know, figuring out portrait drawing and then kind of expand a little bit outward from there. I think I spent a lot of time kind of mastering figure drawing and figure painting. And listen, I think it's fantastic. It's great. I think that I wouldn't trade that knowledge for the world. That being said, you know, if I'm 40 and I'm trying to like just get into stuff, but I'm also thinking like anyway, I don't want to miss learning the figure. I mean, as I say this, I'm going like, oh, that sucks. Like the idea that I'm just not, you know, learning figure drawing. What would I do? I'd probably just do everything the same. It would just take a little bit longer. And yeah, I don't really regret much of anything about like how I went through things. You know, it's long, it's laborious. I think that one of the things that I did that I wish I would have done differently is I just wish I would have listened more. You know, I mean, you know, it's funny to say because probably on the outside, maybe, you know, it looked like I was, you know, I was attentive and whatever. Like, I mean, you can't learn this stuff without listening to something, but I just feel like I could have listened more. Just shut up and listened a lot more, and just kind of paid attention to the practical advices that I was getting. And then, you know, because here's the thing, like not all advice comes in like this perfect, beautiful package, you know, where every single part of it is super useful. You know, a lot of times there's a lot of chaff to separate from the wheat, you know? And I think a lot of times would just like throw out the baby with the bathwater a bit. And I could have been a bit more patient and just a bit more attentive to the information that I took in and how I took it in. That's what I would change. It wouldn't really be anything structural about like the kinds of lessons that I took. It would be like how I responded to those lessons, which, by the way, I mean, you discover over the years, and I really believe this to be true. You know, advice isn't so much about the person giving the advice. It's very much about the person receiving the advice, right? You can give great advice to a person who's not willing to listen to it, and it can be completely and utterly useless. You can give really average advice to somebody who's really focused, dialed in, is solution oriented, is searching for value, and that person is going to take even mediocre advice and they're going to make you know, a whole meal out of it. So I would have changed my mentality to be the kind of person who's searching for why things could work instead of why I didn't agree with them. Yeah, that was a good soapbox moment. I think we're probably going to wrap up there. I still have more work to do on this. Don't get me wrong. This one is, will I do another live stream of this? Let's see how Iggy behaves next week. If Iggy takes all of our time again, I bet you will see this painting again next week, and you'll see me trying to finish it. If Iggy is a little bit less time intensive, then I'll probably be doing a new project next time around. All right, folks, people, listen, thank you all so much for like watching and listening to me ramble and saying my dog is cute. I appreciate that very much. What's that? And yeah, and Cornelia appreciates it also, and she says hello and to everybody. And if you want to learn about this stuff from us, Cornelia is a great teacher as well. Cornelia Hannes Artist, or patreon.com/Cornelia Hannes Artist. If you want to learn with me, patreon.com/Cornelia Hannes Artwork. If you want to study with me, it's patreon.com/Stephen Bauman Artwork. Too much talking. Whatever, you guys know where all this stuff is. Check the links down in the description. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff. And